And good morning and welcome to today's webinar. So my name is Marie Cheng and I'm a Partnerships Manager here at My HR Toolkit, and I'd like to welcome you all this morning. As you may have known, if you've joined us before, we've been running a series of different webinars on different HR topics and business topics, which have all been very popular. And since January, we've just been starting a series of webinars a bit more specifically on some of the SME and HR consultant kind of type skills that might be really helpful. So again, if you've joined us before, we've been doing topics such as running engaging webinars, SEO, social media, and today we're looking at something a little bit different in terms of format. As many of you are probably aware of the fact that in a pre-pandemic stage, a lot of us were probably out there going on different networking type events, but what do we do now that we're working from home? So this morning, what we're going to be looking at is some virtual networking tips. So both how to run them as well as if you're an attendee on one, how to make the most of that. And I'm joined by Stewart from Yorkshire Powerhouse to give us his tips and tricks. So just a bit of background and housekeeping before we start. So Stewart's going to be doing a bit of a session which will be about 20-25 minutes covering the main part of the content. Then what we're going to do is open it up at the end to answer some of your questions. So you'll see there's a little toolbar at the bottom with the question and answers box, so feel free please to pop any questions in there that you'd like to ask, which we can come to at the end. There's also a Zoom chat box, so get involved in the chat, but if we could ask you to keep the Q&A into the question and answer box just so that we don't lose them in the chat, that would be great. Just again, a bit of housekeeping, obviously just to clarify that today's session is about general advice, tips and best practice. And also, as you're aware of the fact that we do quite a number of different webinars, and as usual, we've got one in a couple of weeks, which is on the 14th of April, which is about how to create compelling content to attract clients. So what I will do is put a link to the registration page in the chat once we've got going. So just in terms of intros then, so we have this morning to talk about virtual networking in the new normal is Stewart from Yorkshire Powerhouse. So I will now hand over to Stewart to introduce himself. So Stewart, if you'd like to say hello.
Thanks, Marie. Good morning. So for those that don't know me, my name's Stewart Leahy. I own and operate the Yorkshire Powerhouse project. And the project is essentially a Yorkshire-focused business advice website that provides advice, and topics that we cover include planning and finance, marketing, growing, and coaching and mentoring a business. My background is sort of 30 odd years of running my own businesses, and I retired about 4 years ago, so I do this now for the fun of it. The project evolved about 18 months ago into providing networking, but I've been networking for 25 years. I've done all the sort of classic networking groups, the BNIs, the for networking, the B4Bs. I've been on every training course I can come up with, and I now deliver networking training. And so as Marie was explaining, I'm going to cover 4 main questions. The first 2 focus on how to perform and how to get performance out of attending networking meetings, and the second 2 are based on how to host your own networking sessions. So hopefully I'll sort of cover a lot of points, cover it in about 20 odd minutes, and hopefully not rattle on too much and bore everyone. So here we go. First opening comment, nothing to do with the 4 questions I'm going to answer, just a general comment and an observation that I've made over the years of people attending networking meetings, and that is, this is a no-brainer comment really, the business people who get the most out of business-to-business networking events are generally the ones who put the most work in. There's no real surprise there, but what I mean by that, in terms of the ones that put the effort in, they're the ones that prepare, the ones that are consistent in the way they present themselves and how they present themselves visually, as well as using the words that they use. They present themselves extremely well. They follow the KISS principles of keep it simple, stupid, and they follow up. And actually, the follow-up is the key to networking. Generally, a networking meeting means you meet a load of people, some of which you probably won't have connections with, but it's what you then do after that networking meeting that makes a difference. Okay, So the first two questions are based on our own attendance of networking meetings. Question one is how to get the most out of virtual networking, because Zoom is this thing that we're all getting. I think that there's a truth here that people are getting a bit fatigued with. But you can still get a lot out of a virtual networking meeting. So how to get the most out of it, but also how to pitch your services at virtual networking meetings. So I'm going to cover those two first. So here we go. Hopefully about 10 minutes time, we'll jump onto how to run a networking meeting for your own benefit and for the benefit of the attendees. So first of all, how to get the most out of virtual networking. First comment, if you are going to go networking of any sort, whether it's virtual or face-to-face or anything, because face-to-face might be available to us in the next few months, one of the overriding comments that I will make is that all networking activity should be built around your marketing strategy. So then the question to you is your marketing strategy strong? Are you actually aware of the strength of your brand, for instance? And when I talk about brand, people mix up brand and logo. I'm not talking about logo. Brand is a much more all-encompassing thing. It's covering your online presence. It's covering how you present yourself. Those of you who are wide-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning will notice I'm wearing my branded t-shirt. I've got a banner stand behind me. When I take the slurp of brew, I've got my branded mug. It's part of the deal. That personal brand is part of the deal of presenting your corporate brand. The corporate brand is things like your LinkedIn presentation. Does your LinkedIn list you and present you well? Have you got recommendations and things like that? Is your website saying the right message? Are you, when you're networking, representing that brand and following the brand message? And it's things like that. The message is key. I mean, my background, I'm a marketeer. So my marketing sort of training and everything in my being says, let your networking follow your message, and your message should reflect the needs and the demands of your target client. So it should always start right at the top of the funnel by who do you want to sell to, and what are you offering to them, and what's their pain points, and then your message, the bit that should capture their attention, should be focused on how you and your service or product resolve their pain and help them deal with those problems. There are all these background resources, because if you meet someone network and you go, actually, that person, that accountant, that web designer, that HR company, I like what they're saying, I'm going to go and check them out. This is why your whole brand is important, because they're not likely to contact you at the networking meeting and say, hey, I want to buy off you. That's an unreasonable expectation. They're much more likely to go off, connect with you on LinkedIn, have a look at your LinkedIn, have a look at the website, maybe download a brochure, and then if they're still persuaded, get in touch. So those background resources are absolutely essential to keeping the message going. And there needs to be this strategic consistency through all of that marketing. Second point, networking can produce direct sales, as I've just described. You know, someone meets you, they like the sound of what you're talking about, they check you out, and then they engage with you. It's less likely. What's much more likely is that you're going to meet people that you might be able to work with at some point in the future when they're ready. And it's that bit, that last comment about their timing, that is key. Very rarely do people come networking because they're looking for a supplier. They come networking because they're trying to pitch their business or their service. So you need to bear that in mind and be conscious of it and consider their timing. Now, networking can absolutely come into your sales and marketing funnel. I always talk about the sales and marketing funnel. I don't tend to use the pipeline model because that just considers a single tube. I like the funnel. And networking is top of the funnel, with it funneling in or putting contacts into your funnel. If you've got a good sales and marketing funnel, then there's a lot of automation in that process. So at the very top of the funnel, once you've got contacts coming in from your networking activities, for instance, there should be some white noise automation, some educational content going out, and general information, educating and helping people understand why they should deal with that. And all of that automation should still be pure to your marketing strategy. And as you come down the funnel, there should be some prospect identification, where you can recognize, based on the actions and the reactions of the people that you're communicating with, that maybe you can start identifying who you should be squeezing and having a conversation with. And then you've got the squeezing process that hopefully then produces sales opportunities. And then it's for you to go and sell. Okay, so networking is an integral part of most businesses' marketing strategy, especially B2B sector. Next comment, how to get the most out of virtual networking. You have to go. You have to be regular. Shop around a bit, work out the meetings that you like, and then commit to one or two and become a regular presenter and a regular attendee. That's how you build the know, like, trust element that a lot of networking organizations talk about. You have to be known, you have to be recognized, there has to be a degree of credibility, and then there's an opportunity for business to flow. So do shop around. And then going back to my original comment about people who put the most effort in get the most results, practice your pitch. Now, we're all using Zoom today. Zoom's an amazing environment because it's changed the rules on how to practice. In the old days, we get our script and we'd go stand in front of a mirror and we'd read it out and we'd try and watch ourselves whilst trying to concentrate on presenting. And that's two tasks that certainly fellas can't do at once. With Zoom, you can just open your own Zoom up, record it and do your pitch to Zoom. And then you can play it back and watch yourself. So you don't have to concentrate on looking at yourself. You can concentrate on presenting your 60-second presentation. So use Zoom, record yourself, and then watch it back and go, oh, why am I doing that? Why do I keep doing that with my mouth? There's all sorts of bad habits that we all do. So it's an easy way to start spotting them, start taking them out of your situation. Right, here's a dose of horrible reality. Zoom is a terrible place to do networking. All right, it just is. We're all looking at a computer screen. We're not interacting. There's no audio where we can have a bit of banter. And there's reasons for that. If we opened the audio up, it'd crash. So it's an awful place to go networking when you compare it to old school face-to-face networking. There are things you can do to help people recognize and notice you, because especially when there's a screen of 20 or 30 pictures of heads and shoulders, you need to kind of go out of your comfort zone to be noticed. So there's things that you can do. The alert amongst you will notice, I'm not sat down, I stand. Now, I happen to have a standing desk. I stand all day long. I love it. One of the advantages of standing is that it kind of forces you into moving about a bit. And it's quite comfortable for me to be able to keep speaking and talking. And you can see I'm using my hands. It's a very visual thing. And the advantage of doing it that way means you are catching the eye. Movement in your window, in your screen, means people are going to be caught by your movement. The more people who are attending a networking meeting, the less you're visual, and that's obviously a bit of an issue. You can use props. Now, I'm going to come back to this prop in a moment, but here's a prop, and I can use a prop, and it kind of wakes everyone up. It doesn't have to be a visual prop. It can be an audible prop. It can be a visual. It doesn't matter. But the point being, using props, being active, actually moving in that little window that you're presenting on, means that you're going to catch the eye and capture the attention of the people attending that networking meeting. A couple more points. You need to build your connections. That's just a general comment here. But what I would always encourage, if you're going to go networking and you're going to meet some new people, long before you go to that networking meeting, have your follow-ups ready. Have them pre-written. You only need 2 or 3. Generally, there's one that just says, hey, it was nice to meet you. Shall we connect? There's a second one that says, hey, it was nice to meet you. I'd really like to get to know your business a little bit more. I think we might be able to look after each other. Shall we have a one-to-one? And the third one is, we must have a one-to-one. I think we can pass business each other's way. I think we're in complementing businesses. Why don't we meet? So they're 3 really straightforward follow-ups. You can have them pre-written, and all you've got to do is put the person's name in them to make them personal. It's easy to do, and you can have this automated follow-up really fast. Next thing, standard networking comment here. This is not exclusive to digital networking or Zoom networking. This is just common sense. You need to be inclusive. You don't know, when you're meeting someone, you don't know who they know. And I don't just mean their business connections. I mean their private connections. They might be married or in a relationship with your potential best prospect. You need to keep yourself open to meeting people and getting to know them. Having those virtual one-to-ones after meeting someone at a networking meeting is what it's all about. And so it's important to keep your mind open to who you're talking to. Just because you think they're not worth your time doesn't mean they're not. They might be in a connection with someone that is the most valuable connection you'll ever make. A final comment for this question, always follow up and always have a range of follow-ups. I've said this already, but the follow-up is key to networking working. Right, question number 2, I'm going to cover this one really fast. How to pitch your services at a networking meeting. We've all heard of the elevator pitch. I'm just going to break it down very quickly and give you some tips. An average networking meeting has an elevator pitch timing of around 60 seconds. So if you're doing a 60-second pitch, my guidance is 5 seconds should be an intro. Hi, my name's Stewart Leahy from Yorkshire Powerhouse. I own and operate Yorkshire's most popular business advice website. 5 seconds. Your next 10 seconds should be what I call your Ronseal statement. Now, I've kind of already covered a little bit of my Ronseal statement in what I've just said in my intro, but my Ronseal statement will then go on to say, the Yorkshire Powerhouse project provides free, at the point of access, business advice and downloadable resources to small businesses looking to grow and to startup businesses looking to launch. And we specialize in connecting those businesses on the cusp of something interesting with suppliers who want to connect and work with them. That would be my Ronseal statement. You then get 30 seconds in your elevator pitch to do whatever it is you want to talk about. This is your message. So this is where you should be going back to your marketing strategy and focusing on your core marketing message. Then the last, next 10 seconds should be your request, saying that you've got the sort of connections that you're looking for. So for mine, I've already covered mine, so I would just repeat. I say, so look, if you know someone thinking of setting up in business or launching their business, then I'd really love to have a chat with them, because I can provide them with a lot of free resources and some amazing connections who can support their journey. Your outro is the final 5 seconds of that 1-minute elevator pitch. And that final 5 seconds is focused on repeating your name and your business. That first 5 seconds, just repeat it. Why repeat? Because in the first 5 seconds, the chances are the majority of the room weren't listening. It's just a dose of reality. So if they weren't listening, it's best and good practice to repeat your name and your business again, just to repeat and get that across in case someone went, actually, I am interested in what you're saying. Who are you again? One tiny thing on digital networking, just remember your screen name. So you can all see I'm Stewart Leahy. Your screen name is important. I've been at meetings where highly inappropriate screen names have been on display. Your screen name should have your name on it. Some people also encourage you to put your business name in there. That's cool. I don't feel the need, because I've got my branding resources around me, so people can work out who I am and what I do from it. Okay. Second half of this presentation, I've got 2 more questions, and these are fairly straightforward. This first question is how to host a great networking meeting, not how to attend, but how to host it. And one after that is techniques and tips to stand out as the host. Okay, so they're very connected. So I'm going to just go through this, and then obviously if there are any questions at the end, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So how to host a great Zoom or virtual networking meeting. Considerations. These are the basics that you need to take into account and think about first before you set one up. Time of day. What time of day should you be setting that meeting up? We've gone for 10 o'clock. I quite like 10 o'clock. I like mid-morning. I think in the current climate where a lot of people are not working from an office, they're working from home, I think trying to do an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. meeting is pushing it, that you don't get the attendance that you would want to get. So I think a 10 a.m. or an 11 a.m. is brilliant, but it depends on who you're targeting and why they would want to come to your event. If you're targeting people who want to set up their own business working from home, I'm thinking maybe like a utility warehouse, you know, a multi-level marketing type business model. Probably the meeting for them would be at 5 p.m. and that's fine. But 5 p.m. if you want to connect with other businesses is too late in the day. No one's going to go to a Zoom meeting at 5 p.m. On a regular basis. Length of meeting. Now, this is one that I'm a stickler for. I think 1 hour is enough. On Zoom is like we're all staring at a screen. There's no interaction. There's no banter. It's hard to generate fun and excitement in a Zoom kind of environment. So I think 1 hour is about the limit that people can stare at a screen and stay engaged. And in truth, I already know that some of you are probably tapping away and looking at your emails whilst listening to me rattle on in the background. I get it. I know what it's like. I've done the same myself. The host has to try to use tips and techniques to keep the attendees engaged. That's something I'll come back to in a moment. You need to think about how much warning you give and how you're going to promote that meeting. So if you've said, right, I'm going to have a meeting and it's going to be 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and it's, you know, X period in the future, how are you going to promote that meeting? I can assure you now, the digital meetings get a much higher dropout rate than physical meetings. So in the old days, when we're all doing physical meetings, if you had 40 people booked on, you'd generally get 35 turn up, maybe 30 to 35. In the digital world, you can risk half not turning up because it's digital, it's ephemeral. People kind of don't commit to the same level when it's a digital environment. So thinking about promoting it and getting the right volume of attendees is key. If you said, oh, it's Tuesday next week, let's do that. Oh, you've got no chance. You need to spend time promoting it, and you need to get the people coming to do some of that promotion as well. So think about that. Think about how much warning you need to give to get people to commit to it. You also need to decide, am I going to charge for this meeting or am I going to give it away with free attendance? That's a choice for you. One of the things that I've observed over the last 12 months is there were initially, there were an awful lot of free networking meetings that are no longer available. And I, you know, just speculating, I don't know this for a fact. I suspect that the people organising them went, geez, this is hard work. Why am I doing it for free? And they've given up. There are still meetings out there that are charging. You can't charge too much for a virtual networking meeting. So, you know, for me, I think the price point is somewhere between £5 and £10, unless there's something else being offered. If you're adding value by doing training or something over and above a networking meeting, cool, you can charge whatever you want if you can justify that value. Should it be scripted or should it be freeform? I'm very clear on this. It should be scripted. You should know what you're going to say. If you're the host, you should have a very clear idea of how you're going to run that meeting, of who's going to speak when, of how you're going to manage it. Because freeform, especially digitally, is awful because the audio crashes. Unless you've only got a few people, you know, if you've got 4 or 5 people, that's cool. But as soon as you're up to 10 or more people, the audio can't cope. No one quite knows who to talk or when, and it's really hard to just have that flow that you can have in a face-to-face environment. So, in my opinion, I think that you should script it. You should have clearly a classic approach is to have an intro, the bulk of the meeting, and an outro, you know, or an exit. It should be as simple as that and as blunt as that. The most important task of the host is to keep the attendees engaged. And it's hard work because they're looking on a computer and they all know that they can flick screen and be checking their emails at the same time. So as the host of a meeting, it's your job to try to use techniques and tips to keep people engaged and keep them on the ball. The simple truth is that virtual networking is okay. All right, it's better than none. We don't want to do no networking. That's awful. But I don't feel that it's as good as in the room face-to-face networking. And so I think we have to accept that there are limitations to this digital environment that we have to then work around and work very hard. So as a result, the role of the host is important. The host has to create the energy and the life and the banter and a bit of fun in there. One of the things I do in my meetings is I educate and train the attendees on what I want them to do every minute. And I mean that most literally. So I say to them at the start of the meeting in the intro, I say, hey, look, Zoom's an awful place to do networking. So one of the things we have to do is to show our support when someone's finished their 60 seconds. So it's a bit cheesy, but we either have to do a silent clap or have to do a wave or a big old thumbs up. Doesn't matter what we do, but we have to do something visual in our window so that the person who's just spoken can see that they've been heard. Now, that is very clear if you understand what I'm up to. I'm teaching my attendees to be in the meeting and to not be doing their emails and not distracting themselves with LinkedIn or anything else. So I'm keeping them in the meeting. Drive up interactions. There are lots of things you can do. I love the fact that Marie and Camille are trying to get you to put questions in the Q&A. This is part of the life of this meeting, because if we get to the end of me blathering on for 20 minutes and there are no questions, it's going to be quite flat. It's much better that you ask questions, and it gives me an opportunity to do a bit of interaction and to you know, throw some horrible questions my way. I don't care. Just whatever you want, give me some questions so that I can answer them. A couple of other points. The use of breakout rooms. Right, I've had some terrible experiences with networking meetings that have used breakout rooms really badly, where you've gone to a breakout room, you've met 3 or 4 other people, you had a lovely chat with them, come back into the main meeting, and then you go to another breakout room and you meet 2 of the same three people, and you're going, hang on a minute, I want to meet other people. You know, we've all met. There's no value here. So be aware, breakout rooms can work, but you have to make them work, and that's quite hard when you're in the middle of hosting a meeting. The other thing, I always think at the end of a meeting, you should send an attendance list that says, here's who was in the meeting, thank you for coming, and here's their LinkedIn URL. You can't start sharing phone numbers and emails. GDPR would have a field day on that. But you can say who was there, because they can see who was there and the participants, and you can share LinkedIn URLs because that's public information. So you can get away with that. Finally, just to close, another minute or so, techniques and tips to really stand out as a host. Use timing. I know I've gone over 20 minutes, but Marie told me that was okay. So use timing and be strict with your timing. I use the bell if someone's hitting their 60-second elevator pitch, because if you don't, and if you're not strict with timings, they will just keep going. The other thing I do, because Zoom is naughty, Zoom sometimes cancels out noises like that. So I have a very subtle, please stop, it's time to shut up because you're still going. And of course, if they carry on talking after that and the bell and seeing me wave a bell, I can just then leap in and say, hey, Bob, thanks for your presentation, but you've now gone over your time. So you do need to be strict with that, because you will lose the rest of your audience if you don't. They want you to control how long each speaker gets. Second, gently force the interaction of participants. I've kind of already covered this, but things like getting them to wave, getting them to declare their status. One of the things I do is I say, look, at the start of the meeting, give me a wave if you've been before. Brilliant. Okay, so we all know who the regulars are. Give me a wave if you've never been. And we get 4 or 5 people wave. That's cool, because that means I can now say, you are very welcome and we will look after you. Okay, what I'm actually forcing them to do is be in the meeting. It's as simple as that. You can do surveys in the chat. You know, can I ask everyone to blah? You know, if you prefer A to B, just put it in the chat. Again, it's just a mechanism to keep people in the meeting. And the other thing that I do all the time is I take screen grabs and then I post them, as well as a message of some sort. I post them out on LinkedIn afterwards and I tag everyone in. So the average meeting that I'm running, I might get 20 or 30 people attend a meeting. I'll then post a few screenshots of that meeting out on LinkedIn, tag all of the attendees in. That post will generally get 4,000 to 5,000 organic views on LinkedIn, because that's how LinkedIn works. If you encourage all your attendees to then jump on it, like it, comment it, share it, that gets you a colossal amount of exposure, which allows you to then promote your next meeting. Fantastic. So train the audience, explain what's going on, explain the format, and get the most out of your attendance by moving, using props, and keeping everyone engaged. That's me done with the core content. I will very happily take any questions that there are.
Well, I'm just unmuting myself. That's really helpful. Thank you very much, Stuart. I think it is true. Like, I remember I came along to one of the Yorkshire Powerhouse ones probably about a month ago, and I hadn't really worked out what to expect. And then Stuart was like, right, we're gonna go. We've used everyone's name, and everyone has a minute pitch, 5-minute pitch,
yeah,
a minute pitch, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I hadn't even thought about this. And I guess it is a case of like, you know, you go to these things, and I remember I used to go to all these networking things. You're like, oh, I'll just mill around and like hopefully people come and talk to me. I think you kind of have to be quite proactive and like get over that weird threshold of like, oh, you know what, I'm actually going to have to sort of say something. So that was really good, but I think it's just practice, really.
I think,
but anyway,
Marie, on that point as well, as the host, one of the things that I do, because I randomise the attendees and I call the names out in a random order.
Yeah.
Okay, but I fix the random order. Not only a little bit, so it's genuinely random, but the two things that I do to fix the order is, first of all, I would never ask someone who's not been before to go first.
Yeah.
That's not fair. All right.
Yeah.
So I only ever ask someone who's a regular. I always, so if it's a newbie that's at the top of the list, I just fix the list. The other thing I do, because mine are open networking, they're not an industry specific or anything like that. It's not unusual for me to say have two accountants in a meeting. And you just know, if you've got two accountants attending that meeting, when you randomize that list, they're going to be next to each other. It's just sod's law. So I look through the list before the meeting and go, are there any people next to essentially a competitor? And they might not even consider each other competitors, but I just try and separate them. Also, because it's not fair on the other attendees if they hear from one accountant and then they hear from another, even if they're completely different accountants and they say completely different things, it's still, crikey, you know, is this just for accountants? Am I in the wrong meeting? So yeah, the two things that I do to fix my meetings is just separate people from the same industry and keep them apart, and never put a first timer on first, because that's cruel. If it's the first time you've run a meeting, then I think that someone's got to go first. But what you must do is brief them extensively. You know, look through the list, see who you know, contact them and say, look, I'm going to make you first. Do you mind? Here's what I'm expecting from you to set the standard. Is that okay? And you can, as the host, you can control these things.
Yeah, and as I said, I think just before we go into the questions, I think it was really interesting to come onto that, because, you know, some people had obviously been on for quite some time and they had, you know, really prepared. People had banners behind them. People had like actual like 60-second poem pictures.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a variety of different things, but I think it is just like you kind of just have to get out there, don't you? Really, just to practice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, that's given me a little bit of time for people to add some questions. So we're just going to go to the questions. What I'll do is I'll read out the question, and then everyone knows what it is, and then you can answer that. So we've had a question from John. He's got a pretty visible LinkedIn profile with a lot of contacts. What would you recommend to improve the visibility if you're already highly visible?
I'm going to argue that's a LinkedIn question more than a networking question. But of course, LinkedIn is the original digital networking environment. I reckon I would describe myself as an experienced and an active LinkedIn networker, but I'm not a LinkedIn expert. But I work with LinkedIn experts all the time. And there's a guy, if you're not connected to him, is a good guy to connect to, called Nigel Cliff. He is a LinkedIn expert, well worth you connecting with. Nigel's response to that question, I can tell you, his response is interact. So you having a visible LinkedIn profile is great, but what you have to then do is get out there and contribute to other people's conversations, not just your own posts. You have to leap on them, add valuable content, add insightful content, and just make yourself visible that way by interacting and contributing to other conversations. One of the advantages of having a lot of visibility on LinkedIn, I would argue that almost all of the marketing I do for the networking is on the back of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has made the section of the project that I operate, the networking bit, that it's based on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's a fantastic environment. But if you are only an outbound noise, you are kind of missing the opportunity to pull people to you as a result of your LinkedIn activity. So interact.
Cool. Great, thank you very much. So next question is from Joanna. How do you approach joining a network that already has a few well-established competitors within the group? That's good.
How do you operate a business when there's competitors out there? Is the answer. So this, if you go back to the start of the presentation, I talked about your activity, your networking activity should be on the basis and following the basis of your marketing strategy. So if I step all the way back and I go, okay, who are you trying to sell to? So who are your prospects? You should ideally have 2 or 3 avatar type ideas of who you're trying to sell to in your mind. You should understand them and their needs and their requirements and their challenges. And then on the basis of that understanding of who you want and what their problems are, your message should come true. And then you can present that message with your branding and with your communications at a networking meeting. So it just comes down to your fundamental marketing strategy of, do you actually know who you're trying to sell to and what you're trying to say and why? If there are other competitors in the room, that's life. And that's just the way it is. But if you hold dear to your marketing strategy, that should, if your marketing strategy is any good, set you apart from your competitors.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just trying to double check. Yeah, if we could get the questions to chat so I don't miss them. This is an interesting one. Curious around the background on virtual networking. I know this person's noticed that you have a guitar and a biker jacket. Yeah. Is that to give attendees a sense of your interest and personality? Because that person usually has a blank wall.
Yes, but it's not intentional. So the motorbike jacket and the guitar are there because that's where I store them. It happens to also be my office, and there happens to be this advantage that when I'm having a one-to-one with someone, I get asked. And I get asked about the guitar, and I get asked about, is that a motorbike jacket? Do you ride bikes? What do you do? And they are icebreakers. And in part, this is, again, if I go back to the start where I was talking about your brand is a combination of your logo, your corporate brand approach, and your personal brand approach. Now, the guitar and the motorbike jacket are part of my personal brand. And if someone asks me about them, I'll tell you, I can't play that thing for toffee. I've been trying for a year. That's my lockdown project. And it sounds like cats fighting when I try and play that thing. But I'm still trying and I'm still learning. It's something, you know, that's a personal challenge to me, because old dogs can't learn new tricks. And I'm proving that at the minute, but I'm determined to disprove it. The motorbike thing, again, there's a story behind it, and if someone asks, I can tell them about it. So yeah, there's a degree of personal brand stuff going on. In the early days, I hid them. So if I knew I was going to be on a Zoom screen, I took them down and hid them out into the other room. And then I went, why am I doing that? All I'm doing is hiding my personality. And that's crazy, because my personality is part of how I operate and part of me. Why hide it? So yeah, they're there, not to overtly say, hey, look at me, I'm cool, I play guitar, because it's awful, you wouldn't want to hear it, but they're part of what I'm doing personally. Yeah,
as you say, talking points, my dog's usually wandering around the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone's written they have a gin shelf on the background of their Zoom call.
Nice move, so, yeah, very sensible.
Cool, next question from Paul. So in a face-to-face meeting, a written agenda is always on display, or at least available, given. It can help to focus participants on their area of interest. Do you think the same is useful for Zoom meetings?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I said earlier that you should have an agenda, or you should absolutely take control of that meeting and have an opening or an introduction. You should have a closing section or an outro. And you should control the central part of that session. I absolutely have an agenda. I do a very quick screen share at the start of the intro where I sort of take people through the agenda so they know what's going to happen and they know the format of the meeting. I don't leave it on the screen because I think once you've gone through it, you've gone through it. It's also on the agenda I use is also on the website when someone's booking. So it's there permanently if they want it. But yeah, I think you should have an agenda because it shows, as a host, it shows that you're organized and you've got a structure to what you're trying to do. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. Okay, great. Next question from Martin. So he is from a team of accountants. We've been experimenting with virtual networking in online environments like, if I can pronounce it correctly, is it TIO? TIO? Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for virtual world business networking? Well, I'm not familiar with TO. Maria, I don't think you are either. So, no, so it's hard for us to say. Just from that. But essentially, virtual networking environments are kind of all the same. Teams, there's Google Meetup, and there's a load of them, and they're all kind of the same. You end up with a window with someone's head in it, and that's kind of it. So I'm not, personally, I'm not taken by specific platforms. I think the structure and the management and the hosting of a meeting is more important than the actual platform that you're using. Yeah.
Again, a question on the platform by Stephen. Then, have you heard of Remo?
No. That's that's a new one, and I keep coming across new ones that I haven't heard of. But to me, they're all quite similar, and I haven't found any platform that is exceptionally different to the others so far. There are different platforms for different kinds of events. So there are specific platforms that I've attended that are suitable for like a seminar type environment. But the seminar environment tends not to be a very good networking environment. And so this is, again, digital. I think you have to have a laser focus where it comes to digital, because digital is ephemeral anyway. People aren't going to connect to it in as strong a way as they would a face-to-face meeting. So I think the more laser focused you keep things and the cleaner you keep them, the better. The platform that you actually base it on really shouldn't matter. It's the structure and the format of the meeting that makes the difference and that creates value for the attendees.
Okay, next question. All right. So what do you do if someone is being really disruptive during a networking event, i.e. Interrupting?
Yeah.
I mean, going over the allocated time, I guess you've kind of covered with like the whole like props and stuff, but yeah. Interrupting and perhaps using inappropriate language.
Yeah, I've had that. Right. Well, first of all, as the host, again, the role of the host is to control. I mean, that's your job, as well as add value and create energy and have a bit of fun and create the banter and so on and so on. So the host role is actually really hard. There's a lot going on. I've seen some meetings where they have two hosts, and one's kind of doing the presenting and the explaining and the intros and the outros, and the other one's just sort of in the background doing admin and keeping an eye on everyone. I've found that it's okay to do it all as one person, but it does get busy from time to time. For me, I'll tell you my experience. I'm aware that these could be problems. So the first thing is I mute everybody. So at the start of the meeting, it's even in my script, it says, look, I'm really sorry, but because we're on Zoom and because we've got so many people here, I've got to put you on mute. And then it's your responsibility to take yourself off mute when it's your 60-second pitch and put yourself back onto mute when you finish. Right. It's quite normal that people forget to put themselves back on mute after the 60-second presentation. But actually, as the host of the meeting, certainly on Zoom, which is a platform I use, it's a single click. You can just put them back on mute. If you've got the participants list open, you can see who's on mute and who's not on mute, and you can instantly put someone back onto mute. So that disruptive thing, when they're not supposed to be speaking, that is easy to fix if you've set the rules from the off and you've explained that you're going to put everyone on mute and why. Okay, so that's step one. Bad language is a tricky one. Would they use bad language if you're in a face-to-face meeting? Chances are they would. I've had experiences where people have used bad language at both online and face-to-face meetings. I think it's one of those where if someone uses really inappropriate bad language, you instantly jump in and say, Bob, I'm sorry, we don't allow that kind of language at this meeting. We are trying to hold a professional business meeting. It kind of comes down to offense. If someone's going to be offended by the language, you have to nail it there and then. If it's right on the edge, and you go, oh, I'm not comfortable with that language, but I also am not comfortable leaping on them and giving them a telling off, then I think a conversation with them afterwards saying, look, Bob, if you're going to come again, can I ask you to tone down the language? It's not something that I want to encourage. It's quite important to me that we hold a professional networking meeting. That's something you can do. If you feel you're going to have a problem with someone, remember, as the host, you can just say no. You don't have to let people come networking. So I've got a couple of people that I just wouldn't allow to book on for various reasons. And that's fine. If their booking came through, I would just instantly politely decline and give them a refund and say, sorry, it's this meeting isn't for you. So you've got to manage it. If you're the host, it's your meeting, you've got to manage it.
Yeah, I guess related to that, someone just asked a question about is the best way to deal with people to have a code of conduct. And I guess it's a little bit what you're saying, is to setting the expectations at the off, right? Yeah. To say this isn't, because you wouldn't stand for it in a normal
No, you
business
shouldn't,
meeting. So
it does come down to what language you're talking about.
yeah,
you know, because if you've got a chat with the lad and he says something a bit cheeky, no one's going to get offended, and it's kind of, you know, hopefully it's not going to upset the meeting. But if it's just blatantly horrible, then you kind of personally come down on it like a ton of bricks. Now, I've been doing virtual networking meetings, hosting virtual networking now for 12 months. I've never had to do that. In all that time, I don't have a code of conduct. One of the influences I've used, which is an interesting one to try and explain, I'm really proud that the male-female mix that I achieve at my meetings is about 50-50. Sometimes there's a few more women or a few more men, but it's generally about 50-50. There's a high proportion of ladies attend the meetings. And I love that because it controls the behavior. I know for a fact, if you had a room full of men, that the language and the professionalism would collapse, because fellas are just useless at maintaining that professionalism. So one of the things that I'm very happy about is that I've never had an issue that I've had to control as aggressively as that. A couple of times I've said, "Whoa, that's a bit rich, that language. Let's tone that one down, please." And you know, I've said it after they finished their presentation, just to put a shot across the bows. Code of conduct, yeah, you could do it. I don't think it's necessary if you're, because generally speaking, nice people come networking, and that's face to face or digital. It's normally nice people that network.
Do you have a cap on the numbers of people who you let sign up in your virtual networking?
For mine, yeah, again, that's a choice for the host, but yeah, I do, because I run a meet. I publish the fact that my meeting is 1 hour, and I know in that 1 hour I've got about 5 minutes of intro and 3 minutes of exit. I've got 40 60-second presentations. I've got a 3-minute tea break halfway through, which is one of the quirks of mine, so that people can just literally take their eyes off the screen and go and kick the dog, or, you know, take a parcel off Amazon or whatever. And I have 2 5-minute development speakers who sort of do education slots. So I know that if I have 40 people in the room, it's almost impossible to get through that in 1 hour when you add in all the banter and the silliness. But it's so I cap it at 40. But of course, the reality, as I said earlier, is if you cap it at 40 and 40 people book on, you aren't going to have 40 people in the room. You always get dropouts. So you can then sort of get, once you've run it a few times, you know what your dropout rate's going to be. And you can go, so for me, I know that I can take up to 44 bookings before I lock it. And I say, no, this meeting's sold out. Generally speaking, I'm not having to do that because it's self-controlling. I'm averaging sort of 25 to 30 people at a meeting, and that's a really comfortable number because it means I'm not racing for the agenda. I'm not trying to finish on time. Everything's just working really smoothly, and it's going nicely. So, yeah. Okay, great.
Last question, unless anyone has got any more burning ones. What are the extraordinary ways of networking rightly to gain extraordinary success? We would all have the quick answer to that.
Yeah, have an extraordinary pitch. I mean, it's a lovely question. I am going to go back to my stock answer, which is if you have an exceptional marketing strategy with an exceptional message, with the clarity of who it's for and why it's for them and why they want it, and you are exceptional at explaining that and presenting it to a virtual networking meeting or a face-to-face networking meeting, you will get extraordinary results. So it is, to me, it just goes back to your standard marketing principles. Are you getting it right with your marketing strategy? And if you are, that should drive exceptional results.
Great, thank you. I know we've got quite a few people messaging in the chat, but we will have a look at that. Any more questions before we have a little bit of time to wrap up?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, because you're right, I can see there's loads of messages and I haven't been able to concentrate on them because I'm gabbing. I'm going to pick, if it's all right with you, Marie, I'll put my LinkedIn profile into the chat. If someone would like to connect with me, you are ever so welcome to, and then send me a message, drop me a line, and I will be more than happy to chat with anyone.
Yeah, that sounds good. Or as I said, I mean, Obviously, this is around setting up different networking, but as I said,
yeah.
when I have gone along to one of Stewart's powerhouse sessions, and that was interesting, as I say, with the format. If you haven't had a chance to go and have a look at that, because it will give you, even if you're thinking about your own sessions, it'll give you some ideas of how to conduct that. Cool, right? I think we're good on the questions. So thank you very much, Stewart, for a very animated 45-50 minutes. I know we've had a couple of questions. We have recorded the session, and we will be sending up a follow-up email with the recording and also the link to our next session, which, as I mentioned, is on the 14th, around compelling contacts to attract clients. So if you'd like to join up to that, please do feel free to sign up to the link. Otherwise, thank you again for that, and thank you for everyone for joining, and hopefully we will see you at the next session. Thank you.